And so I thought, let's start with a few icebreakers, if you don't mind.
Of course.
I hope I think you're quite quick on your feet, so you should be able to do this. So, what is the book that anyone interested in art or architecture should read? One book.
Well, I mean, I'm a medievalist primarily, and I suppose the book that I distinctly remember seeing and picking up quite randomly for the first time was on an old lecturer's shelf. I was house sitting for her when I was an undergraduate, and it was Mary Carruthers' The Craft of Thought, and it's Mary, as some of you, people will know, is a really quite extraordinary researcher and writer on medieval rhetoric. But she, over the space of 3 books, and this is the second book in that trilogy, explains how the mnemonic techniques of the architecture of the mind, this sort of palace of a memory palace and things like that, influence ideas about architecture throughout from late antiquity throughout the Middle Ages, and then of course, like Francis Yates, into the early modern period. And it's just the most extraordinary book that when you read it, it seems so obvious, and that's a sign of a really good book, that it's like, well, of course, this makes perfect sense. And she explains how architecture of the imagination framed quite literally people's imagination as they worked through it, and especially the monastic memory. And I thought that sort of combination of art history, rhetoric, intellectual history, theology, all of these things is just really quite an extraordinary thing, and really brings the Middle Ages to life, I think, as a sort of very complex period with complex people and with complex imaginations. So I would definitely recommend that. And it's that's maybe sounds like it's a very heavy book, but it's not actually. I think it's quite readable.
Yeah, and I think the using architecture as a device in mnemonics is something that Hugh, Richard's tutor, also promoted, right? And we'll get into all that.